How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Grip Lock Foundation Disc Golf Weekly Podcast. I'm Hunter, joined virtually by Trevor today because we are snowed in at our houses.
We got rocked.
This is the
For
first
the,
time we've gotten legit snow in a while.
I was gonna say I have never since being here had a snow where there's been a few times where it's maybe the morning the roads are a little iffy, but it's like it clears up. Today was like, no, it's bad. It's bad out there. I looked
Yeah.
outside and I was like, that's a death trap.
Yeah, I think it's still, for the next hour, it's still sleeting, at least in my house.
It is here too. That's the
So,
that's the perfect Lynchburg weather where you get some nice pretty snow and it's like, let's ruin it.
yeah, it sucks because it's we didn't even get that much snow. We got
No.
3 inches at my house, but then it's just an inch of ice on top of it.
Yeah.
Gonna be
Yep.
fun for sledding, though. Once I'm done with this, I'm gonna take Luca
It will be
up to my
fast.
parents' house and let him go sledding. I think my sister says she might drive the gator over and pull him on a tube
That'd be
behind it.
nice.
So we'll have a fun day today. But y'all are also in for a treat because we have, I believe I counted 26 sponsorship movement announcements of some type.
So many.
To go over today. We will also be talking. The PDGA announced their Player of the Year. The old director of operations from Dynamic Discs did a Ask Me Anything on Reddit, so that went about as expected. Edwin sent over a stat of the week. We'll go over that, have a little Trevor's trivia, and then we'll wrap up the show. Should be a good time. Before we get into all of that, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's episode. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all of the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC, head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use promo code BLEAV for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. Okay, let's jump straight into off-season movement. I actually went ahead and made a spreadsheet for myself.
Yeah.
Not fully necessary. If you're trying to follow along at home, you can head over to discgolf.ultiworld.com, and they actually have a 2025 pro sponsor mega thread where it's been updated as of yesterday. That kind of gives you all the information you need to know. I made a spreadsheet more or less so I could check off who we've talked about and who we haven't, so I don't get lost and start
Good
telling
point.
y'all about stuff we've already went over. Before we get into player movement, Thought Space Athletics, we talked about some last week, I believe. They are teasing something with Discraft. It's pretty obvious it's the Discraft logo. We don't know what that fully looks like. Some people are speculating, is Discraft going to start making some of their discs so that they can catch up what MVP wasn't able to do? Are they just going to be doing some custom stamps on Discraft? Who knows? I don't know, but they're teasing something with Discraft, which makes you think that that might have been their kind of big announcement they were talking about doing in 2025.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how much of Thought Space's audience is currently just MVP throwers that just are okay, we already like MVP, let's throw some of this stuff. It's got cool artwork. I like some of the molds. Or if they just kind of have their own kind of homegrown audience that just kind of came over because they like the brand. Because if they were moving to Discraft, well, first of all, there's a world where they're kind of splitting. They can do a little bit with MVP, a little bit with Discraft. That would be interesting. That'd be kind of unprecedented almost. I guess kind of like what Discmania had done in the past, and maybe even a little bit of Prodigy. But the idea that they would switch completely, you'd have to imagine that they had some diehard MVP fans that wouldn't follow that train, but then you might gain some Discraft fans. It would be almost a really weird, a complete shift of your audience.
I'd be shocked if they were switching completely. ThoughtSpace already has some putters that are made from, I think, a non-disc golf. I think it's just a plastic injection molding place. So they already aren't fully MVP, which means that it can't be an exclusive deal with MVP. So I'm imagining that they have some new molds that they can't get machine time with MVP or something, and they're releasing those with Discraft. What it will get interesting is just I think their baseline plastic is currently not made with MVP,
right,
but all premium plastic is. So then you're going to have to introduce new premium plastic types. So things will get really confusing.
It's kind of an interesting idea to what if they were pivoting their strategy and were hey, let's just try and get a few molds with as many disc golf companies as possible and just we have a little bit for everybody. Like, oh, you like Trilogy? We got some Trilogy molds. Like, just spread it all out.
Yeah, but at that point, why not just custom stamp? Way cheaper.
Yeah,
A lot
well,
less, a lot of less minimums.
yeah. I mean, I guess it's because you're holding on to like your own molds, but yeah, it does almost become. It starts to feel like that, anyways.
Well, but with MVP, the question's always been like, who owns the molds?
Right.
Because we've seen MVP take molds that seem to be like the Mustang, the is it the Praxis? What is the Mustang for Thought Space?
I think the Mustang was.
There's one disc that came in that we're like, yeah, this is a Mustang, dead
I don't
on.
know that there's a gyro one that feels like that.
No, but I'm saying Mustang's mint.
Yeah.
There was
but
one
it's
for
not
Thought
an Echo
Space.
or a Detour.
No, there's one for Thought Space.
It's a
dead
Thought
on the
Space
Mustang.
in mint. I got what you're saying. Oh,
Yeah.
no, the one we noticed was there was one that was a Taco dupe.
The Taco dupe as well. Yeah. There was a Taco and a Mustang dupe, and then we found that both of them were being sold also on Amazon under MVPs, like whatever they called their Amazon like cheaper one.
Yeah, I forget.
So with that, it's like, okay, are they just leasing these molds that MVP has? Which if so, that's way cheaper than buying your own molds. But then
Right.
at the same time, it's like you're just custom stamping a disc, and MVP gives you the right to call it whatever you want.
Exactly.
Basically. So is that what we're going to see with Discraft, where it's like maybe they're going to share molds with DGA or something?
That's what I'm saying. Would they hose DGA and just start lending out like their Hurricane and their Squall? And
But would they even have to hose DGA? Because we've already seen when DGA and Discraft share a mold or like a top or bottom, because a lot of DGA stuff is like a top of something, a bottom of something else from Discraft. And when they share that, there won't be inner the like words on the inside. That's why like the Avenger SS doesn't have words on the rim. So we've already seen that with DGA. Like, is that what we're going to see with Thought Space? Maybe, I don't know. The response on Reddit, there seemed that a lot of Thought Space throwers really like Thought Space because they really like MVP plastic. And if you're a really big fan of MVP plastic, it's drastically different than Discraft plastic. So a lot of people weren't too happy about that. But there are a lot of Discraft fans out there, so you will be tapping into that, because the opposite's also true. If you're a really big fan of Discraft plastic, MVP plastic does feel a lot different. It might be, tackier than you're used to, or softer than you're used to, or Proton stiffer a lot of times than Z. So there's also going to be some of that side where people who love Discraft wouldn't have thrown Thought Space because they're not MVP fans. So it'll be an interesting thing to follow, or it could just be none of the above. There could be like a Discraft Pro that's like somehow also signing with Thought Space or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
But all signs point to some type of manufacturing agreement. But that's the manufacturing side. I'm going to just run through the players that have announced they're leaving their sponsor / where they're going to, and then we will come back and park on a few of the big ones. I think that's going to be the easiest. That would be address everyone, and then we come back to the bigger ones. So first thing that happened, I think it's going to be easiest actually if I just sort this by who the players were with in 2024. So in 2024, from the DGA team, we have Eliezer Mittling, Andrew Miranda, Andrew Marweed, and Cole Redalin have all announced they're staying with DGA. Parker Welk has announced he's leaving DGA. So DGA is losing Parker Welk, keeping a lot of their other young talent, signing some of them into bigger extensions. Discmania, the only announcement we have so far is Colton Montgomery is staying. Discraft so far hasn't lost anyone announcement-wise. So we have Chris Dickerson, Alexis Mandahano, Andrew Presnell, Ben Calloway, and Anthony Barella have all announced they're staying. Anthony Barella's deal was like a big announcement with Discraft, the 3-year deal. We already talked about his. Innova announced their team, and they have lost several players. It's very interesting. So Randon Lotta has left Innova. Kevin Jones, staying with Innova. Joel Freeman left Innova. Jeremy Koling left Innova. Kat Murch staying with Innova. Hailey King has left Innova. Emily Beach has left Innova and has claimed to be no longer touring. We'll talk about her in a second. Ken Climo, we talked about, he's left Innova as well. Over on the Lone Star front, all 3 players have left. I haven't seen anyone that Lone Star's keeping. So we have Robert Burridge, AJ Carey, Deanne Carey have all left Lone Star. Then Mason Ford is sticking with Mint. He's also signed an additional deal with Meridian Discs. He's the first touring pro I've seen sign with Meridian Discs. On Prodigy, I haven't exactly seen any announcements of who they're keeping, but they have lost Ezra Robinson, Isaac Robinson. Both of those were expected. They now officially have lost them. Aiden Scott, and then Kale LaVisca we talked about. Only one of those that has officially announced is Ezra Robinson signed with Discraft. A lot of people are estimating Isaac Robinson to be signing with Latitude 64. There was a Reddit rumor about seeing him at airport in Sweden in Latitude 64 gear, and then Latitude posted a picture of the back of someone basically saying 2025 is going to bring a lot of changes, and most people in the comments are like, that's the back of Isaac Robinson. Whether or not it is, who knows? Time will tell, but no official announcement there yet. So let's go back up. Oh, and the final one here, Emily Weatherman went from unsponsored to signing with Innova. So let's go back up this list and address the big ones here. Jeremy Koling, I think, is the biggest of these to talk through. Very, very unexpected, at least on my front. He wrote a very long Instagram post about him leaving Innova. The thing I want to focus on is the wording of this, because I think this is going to be very interesting, and it has formulated my thought on what he's going to do. In like the third or fourth paragraph, he starts it by saying, as I transition into the next phase of my career, my professional ambitions change with it. It is no longer about striving to etch my names on trophies, dare I say it hasn't been that way in years, but about my role as an ambassador for the sport. I still plan on competing on tour and being the best player possible, but that's only a very small part of the role I play. And then he goes on to continue that. So my thoughts with Jeremy Koling leaving Innova, I'm expecting him to be not really re-signing with another manufacturer. If he does, that'll be a kind of a secondary role. I'm expecting him to go into more of the content creation or commentator side of the sport.
Yeah. I think, I mean, obviously he's already heavily tied to Jomez. You know, maybe there's some more Pro Tour roles for him out there. I think when you talk about personalities in disc golf, he's like he's like the king of like being like a face in the sport and being like a guy that everybody, you know, he's very likable, kind of a goofier, funnier guy that does well in content. I do think it's interesting, like the departure from Innova, and it's always tough to know, especially with Innova. You know, Innova is like they're like the spin zone kings. It's really tough to know whether things are mutual or their idea or somebody else's idea. I do think Big Jerm was probably still being paid somewhat for his playing ability, and so maybe it was a situation where he was like, I'm going to step down, and Innova wasn't just wasn't going to like give him any other contract. Because I feel like if he was still going to be in, let's say he was still going to be in a really visible content role with Jomez.
Yeah.
There's still like that's basically how he was moving plastic anyways. So like there was still a reason for him to be with, and there has to be, in my mind, I feel like unless Innova was really just trying to clear up payroll and didn't want to cut his salary and just thought it was easier to let him go, there could be some kind of competitive reason. And maybe that competitive reason is him wanting to do more unbiased work as an ambassador for the sport, stuff that it would be weird to be associated with the team. You know, that could be the case, but I don't know, because it would. I expected him maybe to be a guy who was just kind of always Innova, like always had those ties, but maybe wasn't the player he used to be. Sure, I don't know. It's a little bit weird to me, but yeah, I mean, I think the most obvious thing to expect is just heightened roles within the content and that sort of thing. I don't know if we'll see anything. It doesn't seem like he's teasing anything like new and big necessarily. Just kind of like shifting heavier into his like other ambassador type roles.
Yeah, it is very weird because first off, we should say we're filming this at 9 a.m. on Monday, and it's going to come out at like 5. So there is a chance that we're talking about something that's already happened.
It's true.
That's the grip lock
It's the
curse.
beauty.
But as of right now, no announcements happened. But what is weird, kind of to what you were just saying, is we've seen him in that role with Innova, and we've seen him in some roles with the Pro Tour, or not with Innova, sorry, with Jomez, and some roles with the Pro Tour up to this point with no real issues. So that's the only thing that's weird to me is like when I'm thinking of it from that aspect, he moves a lot of Big Jerm Thunderbirds. He had to be getting paid pretty well from Innova. when I'm looking at the Disc Golf Network, do I really think the Disc Golf Network is going to pay him enough that he's saying, you know what, I'm willing to step away from Innova? And what even would that mean? Like, are they saying no commentating team can ever be tied to a sponsor? That probably makes sense. But is that like a big enough thing for him to do that? And the same with Jomez is like, how much, like, what would his increased role at Jomez look? Like,
Right.
My initial thought is that makes the most sense. And my gut check still says that all makes the most sense versus him just like signing with Discraft and now he's just like a pro over there. Like that.
No.
That one's weird to me. But when I actually think through the nitty gritty of the business side, when we're looking DGN or Jomez, like it is weird of how much I feel like they would have to pay him for it to be pretty close to the same. Because this didn't feel like in his post that he's like ticked off that Innova basically wasn't going to sign him again and cut him. This seems like he's kind of like, I'm ready to move into something newer and exciting, which monetarily has to be at least close compensation-wise in my head.
Hey,
but if so, that's just kind of a wild thing.
Hey, maybe he's going full-time into Noctua or whatever his like
the battery bank
his
thing?
battery bank company.
Yeah, who knows?
Well,
Maybe.
I mean, and to be fair, he owns or part owns that company, I believe. He has always worked really closely with.
Did we ever confirm that?
I don't know.
I have no idea. He's in the commercials.
I'm pretty
I heard
sure,
it somewhere, but I'm
pretty sure he does,
Yeah.
but I don't even know. He also has worked really closely with the bag cart brand that he uses, the like
Bag Boy or
golf
something.
looking one. You know, maybe he's just kind of getting his hands tied into some other business, and you know that just not enough room on the plate for Innova. But you're right, like there had to be some substantial income. I mean, at the end of the day, his name was on a disc. You know, he moves Tour Series plastics, so like it's not something you would just walk away from without either being not happy about it or without the prospect of increased pay or similar pay because of you're changing your focus somewhere else. So like, yeah, it's not like Big Jerm was making pennies from Innova.
Well, let's just go the DGN route, right? Because I was trying to think, first off, are there any commentators that are like active players sponsored by a company?
Sexton.
Philo. I guess Sexton's come on a few times.
Sexton did a good bit of commentary last year.
And he was with Innova.
Yeah.
Because that line of thought makes sense to me. Like I could see the DGN
That's just not
saying,
it, though.
but that can't be.
No.
Because I could see that being something the DGN does, but that does pigeonhole them.
The thing that makes the most sense, honestly, is either if he were taking a really big role at Jomez, like top of the top role, and like that was going to be his whole thing, or if he was starting something or joining something kind of new. Like, I don't see him just sinking heavier into, like, just sinking more into the stuff he was already doing. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting. Like if he's signing with another disc manufacturer, which is obviously still on the table, he clearly by that sentence, like his professional ambitions change with it. Like a disc manufacturer is not signing
What if he's
guy.
taking a job at the PDGA?
Could be taking a job at the PDGA, but he's still gonna
they got the budget.
He's still going to be playing. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting one to watch because he is a big personality in the sport.
What if he might run for something at PDGA? He would win.
But I mean, we saw Will Schustrick run, and he was still with Prodigy.
What do you mean?
Will Schustrick ran for board of directors or something a few years back, and he didn't leave Prodigy to do it.
Yeah, no, I'm just speculating things he might do at this point. Like I don't know about the departure, but
that's what I'm saying. Is like a lot of that, like most of it points back of like, well, he didn't have to leave Innova to do that.
Yeah, well, we also don't know if he left Innova.
That's true. It's just the way you word it. I just
Innova,
feel like
Innova, like either he just is really grateful, or like I feel like Innova might have this ability to drop people and then like twist it and make them be all grateful about it.
Yeah.
They kind of got powers like that.
It's just interesting that as I transition to the next part of my like the professional ambitions change, to me that just doesn't sound like he's signing with another manufacturer because I feel like that would be weird to be like, I'm not trying to win anymore, but hey, I'm repping Discraft now.
I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows? That's going to be something that's very interesting to watch. That's, I think, the most interesting move of the offseason so far. But while we're talking Innova, the other MPO player that I find very interesting is Joel Freeman. Didn't have as great of a season this past year as I think a lot of people expected per se, but he still has a lot left in the tank. He's got a pretty high ceiling. I would imagine he's going to be moving to a different manufacturer. Not exactly sure what that's going to look like. I haven't heard many rumors about where he's going or anything like that. He's also an interesting one for people because he's got a high ceiling. He's somewhat of a big personality, but he rubs a lot of people the wrong way when it
Yeah.
comes to being on the course. So he's one of those polarizing people, which can be good, can be bad. How much plastic is Joel Freeman actually moving? I don't know.
Yeah, Joel is like kind of one of those tragic players on tour who is really solid and like probably will, he will get in a few mixes throughout the year and like probably will be a top 30 player. Um but as much as as much as that's great, at the end of the day, it's a business, especially right now for these manufacturers. Um and I don't know. Yeah, like with Innova, I think it's just a lot of these players looking for greener pastures, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, Joel, he does have a pretty big personality. The thing about Joel Freeman is like he does rub a lot of people the wrong way. He's very emotional on the course, and that's the reason why. And he's a very nice guy.
Yeah.
I've met him, and he's extremely nice. It's just I think his emotions get the best of him. He'll tell you that, and that's what happens. So I think there are some Joel Freeman fans out there, but there definitely are some non-Joel Freeman fans out there. So I'm not sure how that equates to plastic, but yeah, he's just kind of one of those guys. I don't know. There's a lot of those pro disc golfers right now. They're just kind of floating out there, and it's like not really sure if they're needle movers, but they're solid players. Like you almost feel like there's this obligation to like, well, somebody's got to sign them. Like there's solid player. Like dang, but I don't know who's gonna do it.
Well, it's also, what do they get signed to?
Yeah,
Because I think that players, the era of players just signing a deal and it meaning a lot of guaranteed money's gone. That's out the
right.
window. If you're the ABs of the world, the probably Jeremy Koling just because he has it outside of the sport. I mean, Ezra Robinson, Isaac Robinson, I think it's fair to assume they'll get some guaranteed money. But if you're the Joel Freeman, Mason Ford, Randon Lotta, who left Innova. There was a rumor on Reddit that Randon Lotta is done with disc golf and like found a dream job. Don't know if that's true or not. Um,
That
but
would
like
be
those
crazy
type,
because he just had a really good season last year.
yeah, those type players. It's to me, I think the deals they end up signing are a lot more about if you move plastic, you will get paid. Or
Yeah.
if you win, you will get paid.
You know,
Versus, it might be a small guarantee. It might be like we help with some gas costs or something, but
right.
it puts the pressure kind of back where this was 2018 to like 2020, that range where it was a lot more of like, you got your Tour Series disc, you got some, some fundraising discs, your entry fees are covered, and then you get bonuses based on where you finish, and
Right.
that's that.
Well, disc
Go out
golf,
there
yeah,
and play.
disc golf was all about survival. I mean, until COVID, basically.
Yeah.
And what happened was you have this really weird 2-year span where disc golfers got rich and are buying houses and like almost like starting normal lives as like they have normal jobs because their income was like that. Like it, and it was for some players very significant. But for most of the tour, it's kind of shifted back to the uncomfy place that it was for all those years. Maybe not as bad, but it's going to be like you got to want it. You have to be out there. You might have to live in a van, eat really cheap, and just try to make it stop to stop. It's not You're not going to be stockpiling savings. It's about like, do you love disc golf enough to be out there on the road? And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of players drop off the tour this year because I think they're seeing the writing on the wall. The good news is, there will be other players that are willing to do that will jump in and see the opportunity. But that's just kind of the way it's going to be right now. And it's kind of daunting, I'm sure, for some of those players, like even a player who might have just been moving extra plastic during COVID that they wouldn't normally because there was so little selection. I mean, it's just insane. I can't even imagine some of these players, like how jarring it's been to go from what they were able to do financially during the COVID boom to now. Like it's probably night and day.
Well, that's what I was thinking is we've talked a lot about like the company side and companies, we've seen the dynamic discs, the House of Disc struggles, all of this stuff. But there's definitely some players that are going to feel it too. Where you're right, like
Yeah.
if obviously the Paul McBeths, the Ricky Wysocki's, like the Gannon Burrs, Eagle, they're going to be fine, right? Like they either A, should already have a big enough nest egg that if they got cut way down, who cares? Or B, they're still worth 6 figures a year,
Yeah.
easily. But it's the guys who are worth 50 grand a year that might now be worth bonuses, like zero guaranteed and bonuses. That's where the struggle comes in, because it's like if you were making, let's just say it was like 50 grand a year, your tour series were doing great, and you were able to kind of bring in 75, 100K a year during COVID, during the last 3 or 4 years. Well, there might be a reality where you got approved for a mortgage, you bought a house that you can't afford anymore because all of a sudden your contract's up, you go to sign the dotted line, and that 50 grand base is gone, and it's like it's just bonuses and stuff, and you're doing the math of, well, if I move as much plastic as I moved during COVID, that's only $25,000 a year, or that's only $50,000 a year. Like, well, I need the other 50, and it's gone. That's the reality that a lot of people are going to be faced with. And you're right. Like, some players are fine with that. Some players never bought a house. They still live out of their car, and they're there to grind it out. They're just going to have a good time. Other ones are settling down. They have a family. They have a wife at home that, maybe they're just starting to have kids. We just saw Stacey and Kevin Kiefer announce that they stepped away from tour, and then a few months later announced they're pregnant. Like, that's the reality for a lot of people, is you're having those type of decisions, and it's not tour and do this for a lot of people. It's tour or do this for a lot of people. And it's just a question of where's your priorities? What would you rather do? I don't know that Joel Freeman's necessarily in that boat. I know he has a wife and I believe a young kid. But he's a solid enough player that I feel like at the right company, if the good side of his personality were able to shine through, because that's the problem with Innova, is they don't do much player brand building.
Yeah.
So what you see on the course is what you see. Joel Freeman's got a lot more to him, that he could probably have a lot more fans if the off the course stuff came through, so that people understood the on the course reactions. It'll be very interesting to see what happens there.
Well,
another player with Innova that is going to be a pretty valuable free agent, but it's kind of weird because she's been radio silent, is Hailey King. I just checked her Instagram again.
Yeah.
Nothing about a sponsorship change. Really not many posts at all. She did post 3 days ago and said her first round of 2025. And if you look, it looks like she's throwing Halo plastic. So it looks like in that video she's still throwing Innova of some variety.
That's interesting.
But she did take Innova out of her sponsors in her bio, and obviously the way this was all broke was Innova announced their 2025 team. Hailey King was missing from it. So we know Hailey King's not with Innova anymore. We don't know where she's going or really anything else.
Yeah, it's just another one that is just tricky because it's another player who Hailey King, she's at least top 10, if not a little bit better than that in the FPO field. But she's not that top of the top. Is she moving a ton of plastic? How likable is she off the course? I think she has a pretty decent following, but I don't know. I'm sure she'll find a landing spot, but it's just Hailey's never quite. And we kind of saw with the Innova signing too, where that kind of just happened. At one point you thought her career was leading up to a big signing. I think when we were first tracking her Discraft deal to end, we're like, oh, when that ends, that'll be an interesting one. But by the time it did, it was kind of she hasn't really done that well. And then it almost seemed like the Innova deal was like a spacer just to kind of get her somewhere else. And I don't know. I think I expected her to stay a little bit longer, but yeah, I'm not really sure where she's going to land. She's still one of the premier FPO players that you would sign because there is a name there, and she probably will, have a shot at getting a win or so. And still, there's still talent to be had. But we've had the same talk about Hailey King for years now, where it's there's definitely unrealized potential there, but at some point you're going to have to beat the Kristen Tatars of the world and the Missy Cannons of the world, and they're just really hard to beat. So FPO is just kind of a weird circle in that respect. So I don't know. I don't know where she'll end up. I mean, you just can't imagine Discraft signing any more players. So
you wouldn't think, but who knows? Who knows? It's definitely an interesting
Discmania could be a fit.
It could, but obviously we know House of Discs, that whole struggle. So It's a weird one, you know?
Yeah.
Innova felt like the best spot for her. She was playing fine with them. She is one of those players that just, her ceiling is so high, she's just never been able to consistently get there. I think that's what's really holding her back, because if she was consistently playing near her ceiling, she would be an Evelina Salonen, Kristen Tatar, Paige Pierce, you know, that her name would fit into that. But instead, it's just like, she's still she could get there. But it's like, how many years can you be that
Yeah,
before it's just
I don't
like,
even know how
she did it?
if I'm willing to say that anymore. At this
Well, it's
point.
just you watch her form, and if you watch her like forehand and backhand form, and even when her putter's on, like you can see it. The whole game's
No,
there. It just doesn't all click
it
consistently.
it does feel like it, but I've been saying this since
Yeah,
2020.
it's been
It's
literally
been
like
5 years.
Yeah.
And like there's been success. So like it's not like we haven't seen anything, but it's been so streaky and like, you know, that's just how it is.
Now, Emily Beach announced on Instagram that she said, going into 2025, I'll no longer be sponsored by Innova Discs. While this wasn't my decision, I understand and am grateful for everything they've done for me the past 8 years. I will. There's another paragraph. Then she said, I will also no longer be competing on the Disc Golf Pro Tour and will be shifting my focus to playing a larger number of regional events. And then expands on it a little bit farther. But it seems as though without Innova's support, she's going to have to step away from the tour. So Emily Beach is added to the list of players that are no longer touring in 2025.
She broke the Innova hypnotism and was able to say it wasn't her decision. That's the first we've heard of that. And yeah, I mean that says a lot. You know, I don't think they were probably making a huge financial commitment to Emily Beach, and they decided to drop her. So like that's a thing. But I respect like I think a lot of players could learn from the idea that you can still like have a lot of fun and success in disc golf, like taking a step down, not trying to force it onto the tour and playing the heavy local events thing. It's obviously not quite the same, but I'm sure it'll be less stressful than trying to make it work on tour, and hopefully someday she'll get back.
Yeah, and also a lot of times, like if you're one of those players where she kind of was, where she wasn't winning against the FPO field of current, I think she was cashing pretty frequently. She got herself up into the mix a few times. I don't even think she was fully touring. She might have fully toured last year. But if you're in that boat, when you factor in how much it costs to tour,
oh yeah,
you can make a lot more money playing locally if
Absolutely.
you're not in the top echelon of players. And so for her, she can go play, you know, a different FPO event within a 4-hour radius, assuming there's enough where she's at, pretty much every weekend, and end up netting more money than she was on tour. Plus, a lot of times then you can also hold down a part-time job or a full-time job because now you're in one spot all year. And that was like the old way of doing it. I mean, Chris Dickerson did that for a long time. He was like, he would show up on tour, be like a top 10, at least, maybe sometimes even top 5 player, yet he was still just dominating the local Tennessee area and wasn't going past the Mississippi when it came to playing on tour. So he'd play the local East Coast tour events. He was a dominant guy. I think he even won a U.S. championship before he was like fully touring.
Yeah.
So you can definitely make it happen that way.
Yeah. I mean, there is still absolutely the option out there to work part-time, make a little bit of money, and then play the weekends and make an extra 10. I mean, if you're dominating FPO, like Emily Beach, like in a local FPO, you know, area is going to dominate. If you're winning every time, like you can make thousands of dollars in a year.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to actually look if I can see back before she started touring, because like this year, she did play a full tour. She made $4,000. Did she fully tour last year? I feel like last year was her rookie season, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
So yeah, she did fully tour last year, made 14 grand last year. So pretty big fall off in between the two.
That's disappointing.
Oh, you know what? 2022, I'm just mistaken. She's been fully touring for a while. 2022,
really?
She made 20 grand fully touring. 2021 is the year I must be thinking back to, because I think that's when she kind of broke on the scene a little bit more. She made like 4 grand in 2021. 2020, she made 2 grand, pretty much just playing around where she's at, popping out to a few tour events. So the reality of it is she fully toured last year, cashed 4 grand. If you go back to before she was fully touring, she was able to pop into the Pro Tour here and there, which isn't as doable now, but she made $4,500 only playing, it looks like, one Pro Tour event in 2021, and she didn't cash at it. So she made 4 grand basically playing locally, versus last year she made 4 grand being on the road all year.
Yeah.
So when you look at it that way, it's like, yeah, it's better off for me just to be home at Oklahoma and kind of do my thing. So, yeah. Okay. Final players are the Robinson brothers. Really, mainly Ezra Robinson, because we know his deal. 2-year deal with Discraft. Um, he in the announcement video seemed very excited about this deal.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a good fit. When we played with Ezra back at Worlds with their whole group, him and Isaac both had more personality than you would have expected, but Ezra specifically kind of stood out to me because he flies under the radar because Isaac gets put in front of the camera a lot more being the 2-time and current world champ
Yeah.
and like what is it, a 3-time major champ. So he's been in front of the camera a lot more over the past 2 years. Whereas Ezra, I think, technically had a better season when it comes to like average finish and birdie rate and stuff like that last year, but obviously didn't win and didn't win Worlds, so still less camera time. But what I'm excited about here for Ezra and Discraft is in the business of building brands. They kind of like to give players a lot more chances to put their spin on their own products, be in front of the camera a bit more. And that seemed like in the announcement video what Ezra was most excited about. We see this like Peach Pirate logo, and he was talking in that interview of like, I get to build a brand. I've never really got a chance to do that before. So I think this will be I feel like it's a really good fit. I feel like both of them, the company and the player, fit very well together here. And obviously Ezra has a really high ceiling. So I think it'll be exciting to see as Discraft's team just gets even deeper with this signing.
Yeah, yeah. Team Discraft, I mean, no doubt that is like the place to land. I mean, it must feel like winning the lottery to get an offer from them and be able to sign in, because everywhere else kind of seems a little gloom and doom. It's not everywhere, but a lot of places. So that feels like a good place to land. I will say they do a great job. They almost kind of have like their template, so to say, of like, this is what we're going to do for players. You're going to get this and that. And they do kind of give you they do give you a brand, and they do market you as a player brand. And there's always opportunity there. And then where you take it from there is up to you. And but they definitely put you in the right spot.
Yeah, so I'm definitely excited to see what happens with that. Obviously Chris Dickerson's went from Prodigy to Discraft and didn't have any struggle with the transition there. Although I feel like Chris Dickerson would have had more struggle just playstyle wise than Ezra will. I feel like Ezra, when I think of his game, it fits a little bit more the Discraft vibe as far as the type of plastic and overstability and stuff like that you typically think of with Discraft. So I'm expecting there not really be a drop in performance. Ezra moving to Discraft, if anything, he might even be playing freer, because now he probably feels a little more secure at Discraft than he did at Prodigy.
Yeah.
Just based on the writing on the wall that we see with Prodigy. So his brother still waiting to be announced, but if the Latitude 64 rumors are true, what would you think of that fit for him?
It's interesting. We've seen, I mean, obviously Rick was with Latitude, but the kind of like American player with a very European brand. I think that he does somewhat fit into that brand. I just don't know if it's necessarily a place that's going to catapult his brand. Here's what I will say though. Kristen Tatar meshes really well with Latitude 64 because I think that they have a very professional look. And Kristen Tatar isn't a huge personality, but she's a very professional player. She's excellence all on the course, off the course. Like it fits very much there. Her branding goes hand in hand with it. So if Isaac Robinson does have that going for him, that if he does have a brand at all at this point, it's excellence on the course. It's professionalism. He's very stoic. And so I think that seeing the logo on him would make a lot of sense on the course, right? Like I think it would look right to me. What they'll be able to do for him from a branding perspective, will he be able to move plastic? That's tough to say because I think Latitude, at least from my perception, struggles in the American market right now. And so now you're going to have to basically say, okay, is the European market going to get really excited about an American player? And are they going to want to throw Isaac Robinson plastic or not? And in which case, is that going to just kind of be a weird limbo? But I think if Isaac can be he's a player that I think a lot of it's just going to determine how well, like, he's going to have to be performing on the course. If he's at the top of his game, I think Latitude will be there and kind of meet him there and be good as a brand if he's at Latitude. And if not, I feel like he could kind of just get lost. Like, I don't know that it'll work out if he's not playing really well.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that when you think of like what Isaac needs more opportunity in front of the camera.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Because I think that he and Ezra both are in similar boats where if people knew them more, they would like them more, but they don't know them as well. So it's just
Totally.
like when they play well, it's like, cool, that's the Robinson brothers. So if he does land at Latitude 64, what they would have is Kristen Tatar, world champ, Isaac Robinson, world champ. They could kind of do stuff together.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that I think it would be a lot dependent on Isaac's performance on the course, because the reason Kristen's had success with Latitude is I think a lot of it is just she gets herself camera time because she dominates. She's on pretty much every lead card you can ever be on.
And Kristen at this point is an anomaly because she's positioned herself as like the player that every young
She's the
girl
Paul
would
McBeth
look
of
up
2015.
to. Like any young girl who gets into disc golf and looks and sees Kristen Tatar would want to throw at Kristen Tatar throws. So like that is the market she's established, is like she's the best of the best. She's the best women disc golfer probably ever. Isaac, he's got some majors and had some success, but like there's a huge disparity between what they've been able to accomplish from a brand and image perspective. Just Kristen's dominance is just unprecedented. So yeah, Isaac will be, because I mean, think about how dominant of a player Ricky was. And like, even now Ricky with an American trilogy brand, he got a big deal, but has he moved the needle the way he did or ever did? No, like I don't really think he does. So it's tough. Like it's just very tough. It's interesting which players, people really latch onto, and there's only so much space for it. But I do think that here's the good news for Isaac. People had completely shunned Prodigy from a buyer perspective. At least there could be a lot of Isaac fans who will now be like, well, I'd be willing to throw Trilogy Plastic for your sake, that maybe wouldn't have bought, a Tour Series Prodigy disc.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a weird one because if I just think company and player, Isaac Robinson and Latitude 64, like the vibe, I guess, makes sense that all lines up. But if I think of like what's best for the player when it comes to moving plastic and what the brand can do for them, I don't like it. As a diehard Isaac Robinson fan, it kind of scares me for him. But we'll see if that's even where he ends up landing. Obviously it's just a Reddit rumor and then what appears to be the back of him on Latitude's Instagram, but that could be anyone. Yeah. So there's still, he could end up anywhere, but I would imagine that if he is landing there, the play is they're going to try to tie his brand to Kristen's. And if that is the play, then it's all eyes on Isaac. He's got to go out and still win.
Yeah,
if you go out there and lose a bunch,
right? Yeah, they come in and just market him heavy. Like we got 2 world champs in the building. Like we just got the best of the best here, and then he just comes out flat.
Yeah. Tough. What's weird though is like the spot to be within House of Discs, in my view, is Dynamic. Sorry, Discmania.
Oh.
The second best spot is probably Latitude, just sales-wise, but I think that most of that sales is moved by Kristen. But then Dynamic's kind of a sinking ship within House of Discs, just from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
And from looking at our top sales of last year. Latitude 64 was the only of the Trilogy brands that got into the top 100, if I remember correctly.
Right.
But when I think of Isaac Robinson and Discmania feels a little bit more like that, like rocker, loud, in your face type of a feel, which fits like Gavin Babcock. It fits Gannon Burr. It kind of fits Alden Harris. Isaac Robinson, it doesn't quite fit to me. So within the House of Disc sphere, Latitude does make sense there. But I feel like if I was Isaac, I'd want to be on Discmania just because then I could sell plastic with my buddies.
Yeah.
Like if people are going to buy Gannon Burr's Tour Series, they'd probably buy mine.
We'll get to it here in a minute. But as we look into this Reddit thread, it seems like there's a lot of reasoning for Latitude to sign a top American player because it seems like they may want more of the American market share. And considering how, also according to this Reddit thread, considering how much of House of Discs moves seem to center around Latitude 64, them kind of being the big boys, wouldn't be the worst place to be.
It's just weird when it comes to House of Discs, and like you had at one point, I don't think this is the case anymore, but you had at one point like Dynamic Discs. I remember 2016, 2017, like all of that. Dynamic was the popular American brand. Not like in the scheme of Trilogy, I'm saying. Not in the scheme of like all discs. Because like I remember when people were throwing a Claymore or a Pure, it was like kind of weird. Even the River, it was like weird. Like there's a few Latitude 64 discs, but not a lot. And then like Latitude was kind of secondary, West Side was third. And then as the years, that was even when Ricky was at Latitude.
Yeah.
Like to me, his most popular discs were the Harp, which was a West Side disc, the Felon, which was a Dynamic disc, and the Enforcer, which was a Dynamic disc. Mm-hmm. And then the Dagger was obviously Latitude, and I think he had like the Anchor with them, that was Latitude. But like a lot of the stuff that I ever tried out because of Ricky was Dynamic. But as you get to modern day, it's almost like it's an intentional, pushing down of Dynamic to push Latitude 64. But it's like you already had some market share with Dynamic. You brought them in-house under House of Discs where all the money's in the same pot. Why not just lean into the American brand you had? I don't know. We'll get into that more with the Ask Me Anything, but it's time for the fan favorite segment of Trevor's Trivia right after these messages.
All right. We just got a quick one today because we do have a pretty juicy Reddit thread to get into. Simple question today. It's just classic trivia today. Classic
Love
trivia. So since we're on the topic of dynamic discs and about to be even heavier into the topic of dynamic discs, today's question is, how many players inside the top 50 of the world rankings are currently or have ever been sponsored by Dynamic Disc? Now, this is to throw Dynamic Disc plastic.
This isn't like Paul 2012.
Paul does not count.
Yeah.
I will tell you there are 4 of them.
Is MPO only?
Yes, MPO. There are only 4.
In the top 50?
Yeah. A couple that are pretty easy. What is it?
Chris Clemens.
Clemens, yep.
Ricky Wysocki.
Yep.
Top 50 would eliminate Zach Melton. Emerson Keith was technically with Latitude. I also don't even know if he's in the top 50.
Yeah, Keith was not with Dynamic, through a lot of Dynamic, but not with There is one that I think is still with them potentially, and the other player is not.
There's one in the top 50 that's still with them that I don't.
Hardly in the top 50.
Dang.
You
Drew Gibson?
What?
Is Drew Gibson in the top 50?
No.
Okay, because he was with them for a little bit there.
Yeah, blink your eye and you missed it.
Yeah. Man, top 50 is a tough line.
The best way to think about this is think about Tour Series plastic we've ordered, because both these players have pretty recently had Tour Series discs that we've ordered.
Is Eric Oakley in the top 50?
No.
The top 50 is a tough line because
it is.
There's just players are. It's so confusing once you get down there.
One of these players is very tough to get because they're on that fringe. The other player moved up pretty significantly this last season.
Moved up significantly this last season. And good
was
year.
Thought to be a pretty big signing by Dynamic. Didn't really turn out that way, but had a pretty good season this last year. And I don't think he's still with them, but I can't remember.
Can you tell me who he's with now? Or who you think he's with now?
I can't remember. He might still be with them. I just know he wears crazy jerseys. So
crazy jerseys, okay. He wears crazy jerseys.
We have a staff member that caddies for him.
What? Who's okay? Well, Kyle Sinnott caddied for Thomas Gilbert, but I don't think he was with Dynamic. Ian Burchett, he's not in the top 50. But Noah caddies for him.
Noah
Gavin
caddies.
Rathbun.
Yeah, Rathbun.
I don't know if he's with them or not.
I can't
No,
remember
he's
if he is or not.
unsponsored. He's unsponsored,
He is unsponsored, but okay, so he
I
was with them
believe.
last year.
So Gavin Rathbun, and then there's one more.
One more.
This is the fringe guy.
I'll give you the. So he had a Tour Series disc in 2023 that was a Lucid Getaway with an owl on it.
Ty Love.
Yeah. Wow.
He's
good
in the
pull.
top 50.
Yeah, right on the dot.
Wow. Good for him.
Ty
I didn't
Love.
think he was in the top 50.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that name in a minute.
That is the last of the dynamic people that are hanging around in the top 50.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, no Drew Gibson, no Oakley. There's not a ton of them anymore.
No Eric McCabe in the top 50.
No Emac.
Okay, so if you didn't see this yet, Reddit Disc Golf r/Disc Golf had an official Ask Me Anything for the former director of operations of Dynamic Discs. Believe what was his name? I don't know his name. Chris maybe.
They said it whenever they said they were done answering questions.
Yeah. Okay. Let me go all because they pinned that at the top. 'Cause I want to get this guy's name. Chris Edson. Chris Edson.
There you go.
Is the former director of operations, and he just basically, you asked it, he answered it.
This
pretty
is
much
juicy
any question.
stuff.
He was an open book. So I'm gonna highlight some of the stuff, but if you want to go read, there's a lot more I'm not gonna highlight because a lot of it's just kind of either pointless or like stuff you kind of already knew.
I'll say a lot of it is the same theme. So like
Yeah.
if you hear us talk about it, you should go read it. It's a good read.
Yeah, if you're interested, definitely go read it because it's also like he responds to a question and then will respond to questions that come after those questions. So there's stuff I'm not going to get to. What the first one that I think kind of just sums up everything that you've seen over the past several years is someone asked, did the change from Dynamic to House of Discs hurt the culture and internal experience for employees? In addition, do you think this helped or hurt the Dynamic brand? He said, not right away, but in the long run, yes. The change was initially a welcome one for the most part. I think most of us were excited for new leadership and a new direction, so to speak. Once corporate greed took over and profit and revenue goals were not being met, changes happened swiftly. Anywhere from spending and hiring freezes to limiting compensation increases, and ultimately the cutting staff down and passing additional work on to others with no incentive to work harder. I think this hurt the brand in general. At one point in time, every employee was passionate about the brand and couldn't wait to tell someone they worked there. That gradually shifted to simply collecting a paycheck while monitoring LinkedIn and Indeed for other opportunities. So, as kind of expected from the outside looking in, when the outside disc golf money came in, House of Disc consolidated anything, the company that at one point was very, I don't know if you remember this, Trevor, but their whole thing was the whole team, employees, everything, like Dynamic was a family.
Yeah.
They pushed that hard. And I think a lot of them believed it. Like it was a family at that time. Quickly switched to everything is a number on an Excel spreadsheet, and we need to move data to get these numbers to look right, basically.
Well, and here's the thing, and this is probably what, I don't know, maybe big money just doesn't consider this. I think sometimes all you see is the numbers on the balance sheet when you're maybe big capital investors. But Dynamic, what made them successful at the beginning was they were very transparent. Everybody in the company contributed to the brand, and they were so passionate that it was so easy to buy into. You look at one video of, Bobby Brown riding around the warehouse showing off discs and talking to the staff, and you could tell how much they all loved it there, and it was contagious. Like you wanted to throw that plastic, you wanted to like feel like you were a part of that. And I mean, even to like 2020, 2021, when I was on Team Dynamic, like it still felt that way. Like this is before the House of Discs thing, and like everybody there was just really proud to be a part of that. And I think that was just a huge swing and a miss. Is like if you tear down that structure and that culture, people don't have that motivation anymore. That's what was tying them to it. It wasn't necessarily the plastic; it was the people. Yeah,
well, I think that, and at some point they he actually mentions Bobby Brown down here somewhere. I was going to get to that at some point. Man, I really want to find. Here we go. Because let me actually read this really quick, and then I'll talk about what I was about to say. So, to what extent, this is the question, to what extent and how did dynamic leadership discuss their brand image based on trends on social media such as Facebook and Reddit, especially following controversy? Was there ever discussions to shape the discussions in their favor beyond branded marketing? He responded and said, good question. I don't know how far back your familiarity goes, but Bobby Brown did a lot for the brand. He was constantly working to create and promote content. I think his absence hurt more than expected, and there was never a full recovery. Removing the transparency, is what Trevor just said, moving the transparency that so many people came to know from DD after the acquisition was another shot in the foot. What I remember when we started Foundation, in like 2019, even slightly before that, I actually used to praise Dynamic Discs a lot because what they had created was, at that time, they didn't have a top pro. And what I praised them for is they didn't need a top pro, is what it felt like. Because I think what got overlooked was the dynamic between, funny to use that word, the dynamic between Bobby Brown, Robert McCall, and Eric McCabe. They had the Disc Golf Answer Man. They were in a lot of content. They brought in Danny Lindahl eventually. Then they brought in Anthony from Disc Golf Weekly. And like that group, when they were all together, like Disc Golf Answer Man was just a really good time for a podcast. It was pretty much, you had the AMs, you had like Robert McCall was around 1,000 rated, Eric McCabe was a former world champ, Bobby Brown was like all of us. He was just an amateur disc golfer. So you had 3 different perspectives answering disc golf questions, and you could tell they were genuinely friends. They just kind of hung out. And then they had like the Willett Heiser series where they were just throwing random stuff. But the big thing for us, or for me, that actually ended up creating the weekly warehouse update was Bobby Brown would just ride around on a hoverboard and do these like Wednesday warehouse updates, and he would just kind of show you new plastic. I didn't really care about Dynamic, but I loved watching him, and he would talk to different employees. He opened the doors behind what it was like at the disc golf as a disc golf company and let you in, and you started to just feel a part of Dynamic. Even if you didn't throw it, you were very much considering it. Yeah, no one was doing that at all. And I think that hit really Robert McCall's departure, and then eventually Bobby Brown's departure, and now Danny Lindahl and Anthony have also left. But it started with Robert and Bobby. I don't think anyone, because that's all pre-House of Discs, I don't think that it was understood how much that would hurt. Not necessarily like someone else couldn't have filled that role, but because they could have. But Bobby had created this community that made outside people feel like they were a part of the Dynamic Disc family because of the transparency. And I think that was kind of the start of things where it started to slip a little bit, and then House of Disc came in, and you already had this wall up a little bit, and then the wall got built thicker by corporate, and now it was like, yeah, that's just a big company, I don't even know them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned all those names. They just gutted the heart and soul of that company. Like that, a
lot of them left pre House of Discs. Danny left after. Anthony was laid off after being promised a promotion. He was the one that's in a really sucky situation.
Robert and Bobby were the only ones that left before.
Yeah, Robert and Bobby left on their own accord, if I remember correctly. I believe Robert took like a good sales job. Bobby, I don't know exactly what happened.
Yeah,
with
Bobby
him leaving.
though, like Robert, there at least was the idea that he was moving to be closer to family. He was having kids, I think. But Bobby, like, I don't think there was really a reason other than like he probably just wasn't getting paid enough.
Well, the weird one with Bobby was he didn't leave disc golf.
Exactly.
He started the Cool Daddy distribution. He has since left disc golf. He now works at, I think, Shields as like a marketing guy, but he was doing like freelance marketing work within the disc golf world, and doing like distribution for Clash Discs. So that was the weird one to me. Was like something definitely happened there. Who knows? But I don't think anyone valued what he was bringing as much as they should have.
Yeah, it's just a lack of understanding of like why that company was successful, at least from the people that came in. Because like I said, if you're looking to make an acquisition or invest, like they may have been looking at the numbers, and maybe they look at how everybody else in disc golf is doing it even. But Dynamic was unique, and I think that was kind of fumbled there.
Yeah. Now, this next one, he said, question was, while you were there, did you ever hear rumors of needing to cut big-name signings like Ricky as part of those reductions? He responded and said, absolutely. That's all he said. Next one down, responding to that was, what do you think about the rumors of Ricky to Discraft? And he said, simply rumors until you hear it from Ricky. But it is interesting to know we've heard different things about House of Disc players. We've heard some players who seemed like they were on the out that you would not expect to be on the out at USDGC. Ricky wasn't one of those, but there are, at least according to him, a lot of talks about, do we drop Ricky pre his contract being up? Ricky and Kona are the two big deals with Dynamic. Their contracts are up at the end of 2025. Kona making $125,000 a year, Ricky making $1 million a year. Both public contracts, both up at the end of 2025. Will they be cut pre that? I don't know, but we do know from him that there's at least conversation going on.
Yeah, I mean, which who even knows what that even looks like? Tough to say with those contracts how they're structured, but you think about $1 million. At the time, money was getting thrown around in a certain way. But think about now, okay, we've kind of things have settled back to the earth. You think about if you were to free up $1 million on your player payroll. Now, I'm not saying you would invest it all back into players because I'm sure they would not. I'm sure they're trying to get it out of there so they can pay their staff. But imagine if you were to free up $1 million in a year, how many decent and somewhat needle moving players you could sign. If you were signing them each at 50 grand for the year, which I think now would be a pretty good contract for so many players, you could have 20 of them for one player. You could have an army of people moving your plastic. It's crazy.
Well, also, you just have to move so much less plastic.
Exactly.
That's the other thing is you wouldn't even need the army because you get rid of the one guy and it's all of a sudden let's just assume that I think discs are more profitable than this, but let's just assume that to make $1 million, you had to sell $2 million worth of plastic. Then right there, you free up $2 million of sales you don't have to do anymore because now you have $1 million. I think, and that's not even counting the extra 125 from Kona.
Mm-hmm.
So, because at a different point, I don't know the exact question. Oh, it's actually right here in front of my face. Did the Ricky contract ever end up worth it, as in positive ROI? How about Kona's? He responded and said, no and no. Not while I was there, at least. He was laid off, I believe, back in October.
Yeah, well, it isn't going to change.
I don't think it changed in the last 2 months. Someone else asked, can you give any insight to the rumor that House of Discs is consolidating debt on DD and planning to bankrupt Dynamic Discs? He said, I cannot comment here as I personally haven't heard this rumor. I can confirm that the financial struggles for not only Dynamic Discs, but House of Discs in general, were at one point very real. I was a part of weekly meetings where a discussion topic always revolved around which bills to pay and when to pay them. Unfortunately, some of our local business partners and vendors got continuously pushed to the bottom. Emporia is a small town and word spread rapidly.
That one hurt me to read.
Yeah.
That sucks. There's nothing worse than sitting in meetings talking about which bills to pay.
That'd be very stressful.
Yeah.
Because then you're also banking on, if you push that one off, sales are going to have to come in for us to ever be able to pay that bill.
Yeah.
And it also sucks because a lot of times the companies that have the least pull in that is the local small businesses. Mm-hmm. So now it's going beyond just Dynamic.
Yeah.
But like they were saying is your small town vendors, which Emporia, are just going to get shafted because they aren't going to be able to lawyer up or put any pull around because they're a small business.
Right. And one of the questions on there too was somebody asking if there was pushback from Emporia with the tax burden whenever they put in their new headquarters or whatever. And guy basically said no, because people here used to we used to be the golden star of Emporia. People used to love us here. One of my other favorite things from there was somebody asked about the helicopter with Rick. And the guy said that they didn't know it was showing up and they were all freaking out. And then it took them 4 takes.
Yeah. I forgot about that helicopter. That's hilarious. Okay, the other, I wanted to hit on a few more. First off, someone asked him, when did you realize the COVID bubble had burst? He said, it's hard to put an accurate timetable on this. I was heavily involved in Amazon during the COVID spike and eventual fall, but it seemed like Amazon numbers started rapidly declining in early 2022, never fully recovered to what they once were. So it seems like he answered this somewhere else, but basically his job around the time COVID, he was at home a lot, and he transitioned Dynamic kind of out of using third-party logistics, so third-party partners to fulfill their Amazon stuff, and brought it in-house. He kind of led that up, and then that became a huge part of what Dynamic was doing. I think that's something that I, at least from the outside, didn't even really think of.
Yeah,
is when someone came into the sport, us being a retailer, there's a lot of layers before you get to disc golf retailers, right? So the manufacturers were moving plastic through so many different ways because people were looking for something to do. If you heard about disc golf, you either were walking into your local Dick's Sporting Goods and buying an end of a disc, you were walking into your local Walmart and buying a dynamic disc, or you were going to Amazon searching disc golf starter set or disc golf disc for beginners, and people were probably churning through their starter sets.
Yeah.
And they were probably bringing in, and obviously if you're a manufacturer selling direct to consumer, that's going to be very profitable. So they were churning through those. So obviously that is what was bringing in a lot of money. Because obviously retailers, we saw the spike, right? And we felt that. But I think we didn't feel the spike and therefore the fall nearly as severely as manufacturers did.
I can't even imagine what that Amazon was like. It had to be crazy.
Because, I mean, at one point, I don't remember what product it was, but this is post-COVID, so stuff had slowed up. But we were seeing, like, we would go to buy a starter set, and it would say X amount had sold within the last 30 days. That number was always way higher than you ever expected.
Yeah.
It was always like, what are, like, thousands of people doing buying this, whatever starter set? So I can't imagine dynamic discs, what that looked like in that pullback. But I do think that kind of gives a little bit of a window too of like, there was a lot more money coming in because a lot of the people who were buying from Amazon wouldn't be people who were diehard fans enough to be watching the Pro Tour or be consuming disc golf content. They're just your people who you just saw at the local course that probably didn't even know there was a professional side to disc golf, realistically. Yeah. I think that's also what people forget too, is like, so many people play disc golf that will never know what UDisc is, the PDGA is, the Disc Golf Pro Tour, any of that. They're just going out, throwing with their buddies, having a good time. It's something they do during the summer or spring, and that's that. And so that's also the hard part to always value how big disc golf is you can see the UDisc numbers, you can see the PDGA numbers, you can look at views on Jomez and stuff like that, but there are so many players that never touch any of that. That just go to Dick's, buy a G-Star Mamba, go out to their local pitch and putt, play once, twice a year, and that's that. And so, yeah, I think that is they probably experienced the growth on a whole different level than we ever even knew was there. And unfortunately, therefore, experienced the fall on a whole different level than we ever knew was there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I do think... think that was most of the big stuff. There was at one point, I guess you mentioned this, so I'll talk about this really quick. Are you able to provide any formal confirmation that House of Disc wants to specifically make Latitude 64 their European brand and Dynamic Disc their U.S. brand? And he said, I can't comment on the first question. Sorry, that was the question I just read. Alternate question, in case there was an answer. In your personal opinion, do you think Dynamic bit off a tad more than they could chew at the combination of Ricky and Kona's contract, or do you think they're perfectly content with both decisions at that point in time? Can't comment on the first question. I will say Latitude has always been on a mission to increase their brand presence in the U.S. They're fully aware that the United States is about 70% of the disc golf market, and they wanted a much larger slice of that pie. So I guess he did really only answer the first question, so I don't know why he said he couldn't comment on it. But to your point from earlier, at least to him, it didn't feel like Latitude was only European, Dynamic was only US, and they were trying to keep that separate. It felt a lot like Latitude's trying to take as much of this pie as they can, even after House of Discs.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. Like, we've always wondered, too, like, how do these brands function under the House of Discs umbrella? Is there favoritism? Are the people up top like looking at it as, okay, you're going to be this brand, you're going to be that? And I think that this kind of points to the idea that it's not exactly run that way. Like, there is obviously some favoritism, and I mean, it's tough to be Latitude and be like, yeah, I know 70% of the market share is in America, but like, we're cool being the European brand. Like, yeah, of course you're not going to be that way if given the option.
Okay, there's two more I want to talk about. I can't find one of them, but I kind of remember what it said. But this one I think is one a lot of people are asking. What are some of the biggest mistakes you feel like the company made in the last 5-ish years, be it signing to players, wrong investments? He said the biggest one was misuse of money made during the COVID spike. For instance, we moved into our new location, which was very much needed because of how much bigger it was. But there were things that weren't needed, and a lot of them. The company was spending money like crazy to enhance the optics or perception of the brand, all while giving employees a $50 gift card to its own retail store as a Christmas gift after a year of record profits. Someone said giving employees $50 gift, blah, blah, blah. Dude, wow. He said, oh, you have no idea. Haha. Believe this or not, but not everyone that works for a disc golf company wants to buy more disc golf gear for Christmas. And then put in quotes, yes, the 40% employee discount still applies. Yet another benefit.
Wait, Hunter, is this where you got your idea for what we got for Christmas?
You weren't grateful for that? I don't understand.
I thought that was crazy when I read that.
I thought a brand new Elevation Koi was exactly what every employee wanted. To be clear, I've never given employees a gift card to our store for any type of bonus.
That is
of any type.
Literally so wild. Like, imagine that, like being like, oh my gosh, we just had such a big year. We just signed Ricky to $4 million, $50 gift card to our own store,
and we just moved into this giant warehouse where we have those giant dynamic discs with a waterfall when I walk in. Like, honey, we're putting a pool in this year. The bonus is going to be crazy.
And think about this, Hunter. If a retailer hands out a gift card, it might cost them half of the gift card. If a manufacturer hands out a gift card, it costs them even less than that.
Basically nothing. But
they gave them like $10.
You forgot 40% employee discount did still apply.
Oh, okay.
So that $50 gift card's like $80-$90, Trev. So factor that in. All right, let's not get crazy out there. That one to me is wild.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Because I think this is obviously post-COVID, it sounds like. So this is probably like 2021-ish. And so I don't think that speaks to, prior to that, but I would imagine this was kind of the nail in a lot of people's coffin. At least it would have been to me, of like, this isn't the same dynamic disc I worked for for a long time. Because like, I don't feel like that is how the employees would have been treated before. Because like, I feel like to me, if I was an employee and I worked my butt off all year, I got to the end of the year, I know there was like record sales, record whatever, record profit, and I got a $50 gift card, like that would just be a slap in my face.
Yeah.
To where like I wouldn't still feel the same way the next day I woke up as I did going to bed that night of like how I felt about dynamic. So that one's crazy.
Yeah.
Also, he's the director of operations. So it's one thing like a retail employee. Like for instance, our retail workers this year, I gave a like Yeti cup to, but some of them they're college kids. Some of them worked like 5 hours a week, right? That's one thing of giving a like Christmas gift to a like part-time employee that just was, but like director of operations, that's a big time salary job.
Yeah.
Like that's a full-time staff's not expecting a gift card as a like when I was working at like a coffee shop through college, I don't even think I got Christmas bonus. Like a part-time job, you just don't really expect that. That's fair. Whatever. A $50 gift card probably would have been appreciated by a lot of them. But like your director of operations or any of your like sales team or your full-time marketing, like a $50 gift card is just wild.
Especially when this guy might have created like $1 million worth of Amazon revenue they didn't lose.
I mean, that is crazy. The final thing I wanted to talk about, again, there's so much more. I'm scrolling past just tons of stuff if you want to go read more stuff in here. But the final thing I want to talk about, I can't quite find it, but essentially someone was asking something about like discs in general, and he confirmed what I think we all kind of expected, which was the increased price to consumers of discs. Yes, there was increased cost to manufacturers, but he confirmed that discs got a lot more profitable, as well as kind of how he worded it, which is what I think you can all expect with the increased price of McDonald's food, even, right? Like we know a burger didn't magically get 7 times more expensive to McDonald's, but under the guise of the material cost increase and labor cost increase we have to raise by X, Y, and Z, within there they made stuff a little more profitable. I don't think that really shocks anyone when they're out here trying to sell a disc for like $35 retail. But he did at least confirm that.
Yeah.
That, yes, cost increased, but so did the profit margin.
It's good to hear we're not all going crazy.
So, yeah. Well, it's also good to hear that there is room there still. Which makes sense because, there are companies that are still selling premium plastic for like $15, $16, even $18. And I do think that some of the increase of like this disc used to cost $18, excuse me, it might now cost 20. That can be fair, right? Where the profit
Sure.
margin stays the same. So if their cost went up by 50 cents, your cost has to go up by $1.50. Okay, I can get behind that. But some of the stuff where it's like this, a premium disc was costing literally 18, and now you're trying to sell me one for 35. We weren't buying that. I don't think
No.
anyone was. Both actually buying it as in optics and also buying it as in spending money on it. So you can read the rest of it over on Reddit. Just search Director of Operations, Ask Me Anything. It'll pop right up. Great thread, and props to him for having the stones to be so open about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that there's some type of ramifications that could happen there.
Sure.
But hey, he put it out there. So final two things we'll go over. First, just briefly, the PDGA announced their player of the year. Gannon Burr, MPO, same as the Pro Tour, makes sense. FPO, they got it right. Kristen Tatar, player of the year for the PDGA. Props to the PDGA for getting it right. Maybe the Pro Tour can learn something there. I don't know.
Don't say that often.
Yeah, I know. That's why I wanted to make sure I gave props, because this is something where it's like typically there are years where it's like the Pro Tour thankfully is going to get the player of the year right, because like so-and-so is going to get, I think it used to be between like Paige and Kat. It was like one would get PDGA player of the year, and you'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. I think Katrina might have got it because she played a bunch of A tiers.
Yeah, I think Kat got it one year. That was weird too.
I think that's what it was. But this year, Kristen Tatar takes it down for PDGA. Thankfully, she got a player of the year to commemorate a year that she was the player of the year. So good to see that. Now over here, final thing I wanted to pull up is I have a little whole analysis breakdown from Edwin, little Edwin stats to wrap it up. So pretty much, I'm not going to go through this whole list, but basically what he did is he took the birdie rate of players. So you have the total birdie rate, the top 5 players: Gannon Burr, Ricky Wysocki, Anthony Barella, Nicholas Antela, Calvin Heimberg. Those are the top 5 in just birdie rate in general. And then he broke down, okay, but what is excuse me. But what do they look like on open holes? What do they look like on long holes? What does it look like on technical holes, short holes, par 3s, par 4s, and 5s? So let's do a little game, Trevor, because I think it's always more fun. Because you haven't seen this data, right?
No.
So I think it's always more fun. I will... how do you want to do this game? I think I'll just give you a category, and you name 3 players, and see if they're in the top 10 of the open hole, or sorry, I'm about to read open holes, of a category. Caveat, if you name them, you can't name them again.
Ooh, okay.
Because there are some players that you could just use for every single one of these, and you're going to be right.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's even possible, but we're going to try it. I didn't think this game out. I just wanted a way to basically give people the data without just reading off a list.
Love it.
So I'll give you the top 10 so you have the names of like these players who are at least in the top 10 of total birdie rate. But some of them, a lot of them, fall off. So some of them are like top 10 total birdie rate, but then you get to open holes and they're non-existent. They're not there anymore.
Okay.
So factor that in. Top 10 total birdie rate: Gannon Burr's 1, Ricky 2, AB 3, Nicholas 4, Calvin 5, Kyle Klein 6, Ezra Robinson 7, Isaac Robinson 8. Funny enough, Ezra beats Isaac by 0.1% on the season, birdie rate wise. Very funny. Chris Dickerson 9, Corey Ellis 10.
Corey Ellis?
Yeah. So there's your 10. So let's first go name 3 players that are in the top 10 for technical holes.
I'm going to take Corey Ellis right away.
Corey Ellis.
He's going to be my sneaky one that has to be in there. Okay. And then I'm going to take Dickerson.
Okay.
And then I'll take... Give me Antela.
Antela, yep. Okay. They were all in there. Funny enough, the technical holes is the only category where the top 10 I gave you the first time, all 10 players were in technical holes.
Oh.
The only thing that happened was Calvin Heimberg slid down 3 spots.
Okay.
Isaac moved up, Ezra moved up, Kyle moved up, and then Nicholas and AB switched. But on technical holes, all the top 10 stayed the same. So you nailed it there. Let's move over to... Let's do short holes. So how Edwin defines short holes is basically just not long holes. So really they're short to medium holes, because long holes is like a par 3 has to be greater than 350 feet. So a short hole is just a par 3 is less than 300 or 450 feet. So they're short to medium holes. So short holes, give me 3 players.
Let me get Calvin.
Okay.
Kyle.
Yep.
and Isaac.
Nice, perfect. So Isaac's in 9th place at 45% on short holes. Calvin is in 7th place at 46%, and Kyle Klein actually moves up to 4th place at 47.6%. So now let's go over to the open holes. Open holes, we see a lot of different names get introduced here.
That's where it gets tough. Give me AB.
Yep.
Gannon.
Yep.
Rick.
Yes.
I was saving them for that category.
Gannon Burr birdied 57.6% of open holes. Anthony Barella birdied 52.4%, and Ricky Wysocki birdied 52.1%. They were in 1st, 3rd, and 4th. The player that also was in that top 4 was Calvin Heimberg. But then several players, let me see if any, I'm not going to say their names because some of them are also other places, so I don't want to give you any ideas.
Okay.
But there was about 4 players that snuck in.
Well, I only have one player left in the top 10.
Yeah, no, the rest of these you're going to have to just be kind of firing from the hip. So, next one we're going to do is long holes. So these are, again, the not short holes. We have greater than 450 feet for par 3s. I believe Edwin said like greater than 750 feet for par 4s. You get the idea. Just long holes on tour.
Is there 3 names I haven't named in here?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names you have not named in here.
Now I'm going to have to do some recall memory here. Well, let me take Ezra Robinson.
He is not on the list.
Dang, I knew that would be tricky. All right, let me just see if I can get the other ones.
Just go 2 more. We'll give you 1 X so far because you've been doing great. You have 2 more categories after this. I don't know if it's going to be possible with the last 2 categories, but we'll see.
Oh my gosh. Okay, who are guys that would be really good in the open or in the long holes? This is tough, man. Simon?
Yes, Simon comes in at 6th place at 36.4%.
Okay, that's good. I'd have felt stupid if I didn't get that.
1 more to name. I think there's 2 more players on this list that I think you'll be able to get to. There's 2 that I don't think you would have got.
Okay. I'm just trying to think of like... Man, who else did I not name yet that would make sense on this list?
Just think of some long throwers.
Yeah, okay. I'll take Ezra Aderhold.
Yep, he comes in at 9th.
Okay.
Other one you missed was Eagle McMahon.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
He's
Eagle McMahon.
Tough to figure out Eagle right now.
That's the only one Eagle appears on.
Yeah.
So let me look at this list. Okay, Ezra Robinson you haven't used yet because you got it wrong.
I just guessed him, but I didn't use him.
So on this list, on the last 2 lists, it's not really going to be possible for you to play the game. But we'll just try. Give me 2 players for par 3s. There's 2 players that you haven't named on this list.
Do I get to use Ezra Robinson again?
If you want to, you can use them in one of these 2 remaining lists.
I don't get to know what the last list is.
The last one's par 4s and 5s.
Okay. Gosh, this is impossible at this point.
This is very tough. One of them you know, the other one there's no shot. But I'm just give me two names.
Let me get Paul McBeth.
No. No Paul McBeth. Paul McBeth is absent from all of these lists.
How about Matty O?
Also no. The 2 on this list, you had Ezra Robinson and you had Greg Barsby. Barsby snuck in 10th.
Par 3s is so tough.
Okay. Par 4s and 5s.
How many people
now that Ezra Robinson has been used, he's also on this list. There's only 1 name that you have not named at all that is on this list. It's a shot in the dark.
4s and 5s.
Par 4s and 5s. It's not it when you hear it, you won't be shocked, but I don't know if there's really logic behind it.
Adam Hammes.
Aaron Gossage. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
The Goose.
He came in at 41.4%. Simon Lizotte was also on this list. So, fun stuff. Gannon Burr, I believe, Gannon Burr, Ricky Wysocki, Anthony Barella. Let me read. He told me this. Let me break down Edwin's here. He said Gannon, Ricky, AB, and Calvin were the only 4 players that were in the top 10 in all 6 dimensions.
Wow.
So, impressive there. Isaac had 5 out of 6. Gannon, the only dimensions where he's not number 1 is long holes Every other one, he was number 1 in birdie rate.
Makes sense.
But on long holes, AB, Calvin, and Ricky passed him. So fun stuff. Appreciate Edwin giving us that statistical breakdown. He said he's going to be providing us with some more of those the rest of this offseason. No In the Bag or Style Selects this week since we are not in the office. So appreciate y'all tuning in. Hopefully we'll be back in our normal place next week. Quick shout out, if you haven't joined yet, the Heiser Club, our patreon.com/Foundation Disc Golf. If you join annually within the month of January on the $10 or the $20 tier, you will get an invite to the Heiser Club Championships, which happens in Lynchburg, typically around the late summer, early fall. You'll get to play rounds with me, Trevor, Brody, Connor, the whole gang, Cy Guy. We'll play games like Ripped Revenge. We'll play just some of your favorite courses from videos. Hopefully, if everything goes well, we'll get to play the new London layout. So if you're going to be a part of that, join annually on the $10 or the $20 tier. You get the Patreon benefits all year long, plus the annual membership disc and the invite. If the invite to the Heiser Club Championship ain't for you, but you like being a part of the mailbag and stuff like that, and you want the annual membership disc, you can join annually at the $5 tier. And joining annually also gets you a discount. So if you're going to be a part of the Heiser Club all year long, you might as well join annually and get yourself a discount anyways. But $10 and $20 tier, you'll earn an invitation to the Heiser Club Championship when those get sent out, typically around April or May. They get sent out with the official date and all of that. So hopefully we'll see you in Lynchburg if that sounds like something you want to be a part of. Other than that, we'll be back next week, probably breaking down some more news on the off-season movement front. We'll talk to you then.